Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's video is for you. It is for every single board game content creator to know that something like this is possible, to know that you can book a $10,000 client in the board gaming niche. And on top of that, today's video, the entire video is gonna be full of hopefully very, very valuable information for all of you. So with that said, why 10,000? Also, it has nothing to do with Libertalia. It's just the most recent game that I just covered. But a lot of the examples today, I'm gonna show you just using this game. Has nothing to do with it. The review that I did yesterday about it was not sponsored at all. But first, why 10,000? Why that arbitrary number? Honestly, there's not much reason behind it. When I realized that I can monetize what I was doing back when I was first learning how to use the camera, I just made it a goal that, you know what, one day I want to hit 10,000. I want to be able to book a client that is going to pay me to make some very, very high quality premium content. Suffice to say that in 2021, I reached that goal, not even really realizing at that moment consciously until I kind of reflected back on it later. A lot of time has passed since then too, and honestly, I'm just so grateful for where the channel is going, and I'm just very excited to be working with some amazing people and just to have just so many great opportunities coming towards me. And of course, you know that when I grow, you are gonna be coming along right with me. So I have 3 tips for you today that I'm gonna break down, and I'm gonna show you point by point, specifically for the board gaming niche, how you can, maybe not just specifically tips, but more so like habits that you can implement starting now, starting right after this video, in order for you to get towards that point that I reached as well. I wanna get all of you there. And in order to do that, we have to put in some major work. So if you're ready, let's get started. Okay, tip number 1, you need to go the extra mile for board game composition. Most people will do something like this, or this, or this. Now, as always, if you do these things that I say you shouldn't be doing, I'm not making fun of you. We are all here to grow together. That's why I'm teaching you what not to do versus what you should do. If I were to tell you that if you just lay out the entire deck of, in this case, 40 cards, if you lay out all 40 cards in a nice, neat 4x10 row, someone's gonna pay you $10,000 for it. Would you change your mind? 1000% you would. You would do it in a heartbeat to take 3 extra minutes to lay out a nice display of cards. And what happens when you're doing that? You're showing a lot of different things. You're showing that you are committed to show a beautiful display of artwork. And remember that when you're looking at these cards, they're not just cards, they're not just little flimsy pieces of cardboard or whatever texture this is. This takes time to get to this point, right? Think about it, there was an artist or a team of artists that were designing all of this. Maybe there were graphic designers involved in doing the text, the font. There were people choosing the textiles. There are people putting these giant sheets into a machine for them to be cut off. There are people checking all of this. There's so much work to get a card into your hands, to review, to do a preview, to do all those things. So when you are filming cards, when you're filming all these board game components, you have to realize that there was a very, very long process for you to get to that point. And when you start realizing that, then you put in the extra mile in order for you to display them nicely. Most people will probably just take some of these cards, kind of just show them off camera like this, or maybe they'll show like 3 or 4 and call it a day. If you've seen my videos, you know that that is never the mindset, and that is why I'm always trying to push it a step further. If they are willing to put all of this incredible work into my hands, then I'm gonna try my best to show an ounce of their work in mine. Here's another example of what to avoid. Most people will take a stack of 5s and 3s and 1s, all these currencies that you play in board games, throw them in a pile, show them off on camera, or just kind of leave them off to the side during a playthrough, call it a day. That is, again, something that I like to avoid as well. I like to keep them nice and neat, organized, stacked. So I know those little habits sound inconsequential. I know those little details just sound like, what's the point of me spending an extra minute to do that when I can just show it on camera? No one's gonna care about that. That is what we're trying to avoid. All these little details together work in unison to provide a beautiful video, to provide a commercial-like quality, to provide a video that is worth so much more. One more example that I do all the time for going the extra mile when displaying board game components, when composing board game pieces. I also like to show different setups, solo, 2-player, 3-player, 4-player, all of them, because again, when you are thinking about your clients, when you're thinking about your publishers, you know that a game is typically not made just for one specific group. Sometimes there are, like, for example, the first one I'm thinking of is like Final Girl or Too Many Bones. Yes, those are solo-oriented games, so of course you're only gonna show one setup. But even in those, there are a ton of different campaigns. So you always want to show a ton of variety in the audience that the publisher that you're working with or the publisher that you are reviewing. You always want to show a ton of variety in the player count and in the setups. If a board game has multiple campaigns, show what you can without spoiling it, of course. If a board game is from 2 to 4 players, show what a setup would look like for 2 players, because in Libertalia, you would actually have another border here for 2 players, and the tokens, the loot tokens would also change as well. So show that, and that is what's gonna get you one step closer, one very, very huge step closer to reaching that goal. Now that is tip number 1, go the extra mile for showcasing board game components and compose them as nicely as you can. Compose them as if you are making a commercial for them every single time. Now, tip number 2, and that is, I hope it's the most obvious one, and that is B-roll. It's 2022, people. We need to have B-roll. For the many thousands of you that have joined this channel in the past few weeks, first off, thank you so much. And if you're not, if you're new here and you're enjoying the tips so far, please take a couple seconds to subscribe down below. I have so many more of these video ideas aside from my usual board gaming content. I also really love to help creators as well. So help me out here and consider subscribing down below. Now, B-roll. For those of you that don't know, in the very beginning, my channel was not called my name. It was actually called BRoll and Board Games before I changed it to Tim Chuon. Now, the whole point of calling it B-roll and board games was because there was literally a lack of B-roll in board game videos, and I never understood why. I obviously love seeing creators and them talking about games, but for the most part, it's like, we're there to look at the titles. We want to see what the games look like. We can't do that without seeing B-roll. And even in 2022, again, not bagging on anyone, not clowning on anyone, not making fun of anyone, but I see so many videos that lack B-roll, and it's like, why? Why? Now, I'm obviously coming from the perspective of a photographer and a videographer, and add board games to that, board game photographer, videographer in this space. So when you are making videos that are related to those 2 occupations, not necessarily like a streamer or anything, because that's a whole different playing field. Publishers, clients, they are 1000% more inclined, more likely to book you for bigger videos if you are presenting their board games in a beautiful way. And one way to do that is to show B-roll. If you only have A-roll of you talking to the camera like this, like how I'm doing now, then how is that gonna translate towards like their board game? If you only shoot A-roll, if you only show these studio shots like this, you're banking off of one major factor, and that is audience size, subscriber count, viewership. Because for the most part, the B-roll can be used in a ton of other things. They can be used in Instagram ads, they can be used in Facebook ads, they can be used for website overlays, they can be used on Amazon listings, Target listings, and all that. If you show just A-roll, that doesn't translate as well for clients that want to book you for higher end shoots. Look outside the board gaming world. Most commercials are not talking headshots like this. Even if they're talking headshots, there are at least multiple different angles of talking about a product. But with that usually comes a viewership. When you see B-roll, those are the really high-end commercials. Those are the huge, ginormous photo shoots that people are willing to pay huge amounts for, because it's quality in showcasing the product. Remember that we always put our clients first, because it's not about us, it's about them, and it's about showcasing their product. Now I'm gonna supercharge tip number 2, which is providing B-roll, by showing you 3 more new ways that you can film B-roll. So number 1 is the point of view shot. I use these all the time. You basically are following your hand as you're holding components. That way viewers feel like they're the ones holding that component, and also gives people size relativity to that component. Now number 2, so many times I see people using like this Ken Burns effect. Basically means you're taking a photo and you're kind of zooming in on it. And there's just like this parallax effect going on. But that's such a lazy way to showcase board game components. Instead, what you can do is just put your camera on a tripod and add movement like this. Again, never throwing any other creator under the bus here for doing that. I can't even think of anyone who does that off the top of my head, but I know I've seen it before somewhere. And when you do those things, you don't make it a pleasant experience for your viewers, and you also don't really make it something that you can monetize and market as for other publishers as well. Instead, when you add in movement, it looks so much more dynamic. The shot itself of adding movement is simple, and you can still zoom in, but as you're zooming in, you are doing something different. You are showing different angles of the box. You're showing both sides of the player board. Now, when I do see channels incorporate B-roll into their shots, that's fantastic, but a lot of the times, the most frequent angle that I see is this, which is just kind of like a 45-degree angle over the table and just repeated back and forth. Let's go ahead and add some variety to that. Let me show you 3 different shots you can use. This is one of my favorite shots actually, which is just going from flat with the table, you're going parallel with the table, and you're going to slowly creep up and add in that arc shape to your shots. So that's one, just going from flat to arcing over the components. Number 2, this one I've been using a lot, especially in my most recent cinematics. So I like to use this overhead shot, but instead I'm tucking my arms in to keep it as stable as possible. And as I'm doing that, I'm just rotating the camera in a circle just like that. It's able to show you a ton of different components all at once, and it adds in so much visual detail, and I love that shot. It's actually been one of my favorite shots lately. Number 3, how about this? One thing that I've been doing since the very beginning, one thing that looks extremely cinematic, is to reveal details to your viewers. So you can do that by actually, what I do often is to take a box and I'm going to slowly reveal what's in the background here. So for this shot, I'm gonna take my camera like this and I'm just gonna slowly pan over to the side. That's so much more interesting because you are feeding viewers more details. You are revealing more shots. Instead of just going like this and showing viewers everything that they need to see all in one frame, their eyes are gonna be pointing all over the place. They're gonna be looking over to the left corner, right corner, in the middle, off to the center. So instead of doing that, what you can do is just slowly show them a little bit of information as the box is covering like half the frame. You can show them the components in the background, and as it gets revealed, it's like, oh, there's like some secrecy to this. There's some new information that I'm getting. And that's 3 different ways that you can up your B-roll, 3 different angles in what, like a minute or 2? So B-roll, I cannot stress it enough. Even in your everyday daily videos, always incorporate B-roll. All the emails that I get are always talking about the B-roll that I shoot. Not the A-roll, not the studio shot. They're always asking like, oh, this was a really cool shot you did for this game, or this was a really cool angle that you got for these components. Can you do that for our game? If you want to book high-end clients, if you want to get to that price point, then you need to shoot B-roll. Okay, so we talked about going the extra mile for composing your board game components. We talked about elevating your B-roll, showed you 3 new ways that you can incorporate B-roll into your board game videos. Number 3, the last tip that I have for you today, avoid formulas. If you have something that is working and that you're doing all the time, keeping it static, formulaic, guess what? You are going to be attracting the same exact $200, $500, $700, $1,200 client. Let's say you charge $500 for every single board game video that you do. And all of a sudden, next year, you are now increasing your prices to $700. The publishers that you're working with for that amount of time are gonna question what value you're giving to them for you to raise your prices from $500 to $700. And again, I'm just throwing out some numbers here. So your response to them can only really be one thing, because if you're doing the exact same thing, the only thing that changes really is, again, your viewership. That's the thing with formula. And if you are okay with that, that's okay. Like, there's no problem with that. But for me, I always like to push for growth. I always like to really push out the potential in people and the progress, and my channel is all about that. With every single video that you see on this channel, you can watch the last 3 videos, last 5, last 7. I'm always doing something different. And that's not only a crave that I have as a creative, but I also want to push my channel to be as big, to be as best, to be as amazing as it can be. And you can't do that if you're sticking to the same exact formula. And like I mentioned earlier, when you stick to the same formula, you are attracting those type of clients. You're attracting the same $500 client. If you want to book higher end clients, if you want to really push your growth, if you want to show that you can provide quality and provide a really good reason why you're raising your prices from last year to this year, one way to do that is to avoid formulas. Viewership is great. Growing your audience always is an amazing thing where you have more eyes seeing your content, but that's a separate thing. You're not adding to your own skill set by increasing audience size. What you can do instead though is start learning how to color grade, how to improve your audio, how to film better B-roll, invest in a music library, get some better lights. Those are all things that you can do in order to improve your skill set and understand how these things work. Because when you invest in those things, when you make yourself better and improve and avoid formulas, guess what happens? You improve your rate as well. One last thing before I leave you today, just in case there are some who are feeling intimidated, I don't want you to feel like overwhelmed by all this, like do all these things at once. Instead, what I mentioned on other interviews and podcasts is to always just add one new thing, one new technique, one new skill with every video, with every photo that you make. I challenge you to do this for your next 10 videos, and guess what? 10 videos, and you are going to come out of it with 10 brand new techniques. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. You could just try a new filming angle for one. You can just learn how to color grade a little bit more for another. You can learn how to animate text for another, just positions from left to right. That's it. And those are gonna be 10 new skill sets added to your repertoire. And for those always thinking about how you need a high-end camera to do everything, I highly advise that you look at the beginning of my channel and see the quality from there. The quality, of course, has changed dramatically from my first set of videos, but the effort has always been there. I made this Lords of Hellas tutorial, this cinematic showcase, and it took me 2 months to make. And I went to like a million different locations, 2 whole months to make a non-sponsored video. That effort has never left this channel. Every one of those cinematics is always like maximum effort from then until now, but it's that driving force, it's all those little details that add up to get you to this point. And on top of that, guess what I'm filming on today? Did you have any idea that I'm actually filming on my phone? Don't mind my mess, but everything that I filmed today, all the B-roll and the A-roll, all of that was filmed on my phone. Be honest, could you tell the difference in quality? Like our phones nowadays shoot in 4K. That's better than the 80D, the Canon 80D, which shot sponsored cinematics for me in the past. Doesn't even shoot in 4K, and my phone does. Bottom line, I hope you are inspired, I hope you are motivated, I hope you are pumped to move forward, to bring the board game industry to a whole new level of quality. I can't do that alone. Can't do it without you. So hope you enjoyed today's video. Let me know down in the comments below if you have any questions, if you enjoyed this video. And with that, I cannot wait to see what you all come up with. So I'll see y'all later.